I'm Emma Taylor. I live in a one-bedroom apartment just outside Minneapolis, with a cat named Darcy and a coffee maker older than most smartphones. Every weekday, I ride the 710 A.C.M. bus to downtown, walk 4 blocks to an office building with tinted glass, and sit at the same gray desk where I've been for 7 years. I work in the documentation department of a regional logistics company. There's no corner office, no team that reports to me, just stacks of shipping forms, budget revisions, and quarterly spreadsheets I file for people who forget my name by lunch. When coworkers ask if I'm seeing anyone or doing anything exciting, I give the same answer. Nothing much. But that's only half the truth. The rest, I keep to myself not because I'm ashamed, but because sometimes the most powerful things grow in silence. My evenings don't end with wine and Netflix. They begin when the laptop clicks open. And that's when I become someone completely different. At night, I run Safe Haven. It started as a YouTube channel, just me, talking softly into a mic about healing from invisible wounds. I never showed my face. I didn't even use my real name. But every word I shared came from experience, from knowing what it's like to be dismissed, silenced, and broken in ways no one sees. The first video barely cracked 50 views. But one comment turned into 10. Then 50. Then hundreds. People shared stories I didn't expect anyone to speak out loud. Abuse, grief, emotional neglect, loneliness. And they stayed. They told their friends. And Safe Haven became more than a channel. It became a lifeline. Now, we have over 1.5 million subscribers. We've built a private community with volunteer therapists across 4 states. We help fund temporary housing for people leaving unsafe homes. And twice a year, we host free retreats for women rebuilding their lives. The nonprofit side has a name, a board, and even pro bono lawyers, but none of it connects to Emma Taylor. On paper, I'm just someone who files invoices. I've spoken at conferences under a pseudonym. I've testified in hearings about emotional abuse in families. My voice disguised just enough. I keep all the important documents on an encrypted drive, stored inside a secondhand safe under my bed. Even the bank account is under a project code name. My phone has a secure app. I don't leave trails, because I know if my family ever finds out, they won't just disapprove. They'll destroy it. To them, I'm Emma the Forgettable, the one who never quite measured up, the one who dropped out of grad school, the one with the failed marriage. No kids, no legacy, no shine. That's how they prefer to see me. And I've let them believe it. Because while they sip champagne at charity galas, I'm sitting with survivors of emotional trauma, helping them breathe again. And that, to me, is more real than any trophy wall. Every night before I sleep, I check the inbox. There's always one email that hits different. A message that simply says, "I didn't end it because I found your video." That sentence is the reason I never quit. The reason I don't need anyone to clap when I walk in a room. They can keep their recognition. I already have something better. Meaning. And I don't need their permission to keep it. My father is Charles Taylor, 65 years old. Pressed suits, polished shoes, and the kind of stare that makes you sit straighter without knowing why. He built Taylor estates from the ground up, turned old warehouses into luxury townhomes, flipped neglected lots into golf course neighborhoods. Magazines call him a visionary. At home, we called him Sir. He believed emotions were a liability. He spoke in strategy, not affection. Praise was a currency he never spent. And disappointment was always implied. The one time I cried in front of him when I failed a geometry test in high school, he looked at me like I had publicly humiliated the family brand. He didn't yell. He just said, "Pull yourself together. You're not 12. He didn't want a daughter. He wanted a legacy. Someone who would carry the name, the power, the clean image. But I was born with questions. Softness. and a hunger for meaning. None of those fit the Taylor blueprint, so he ignored them. And eventually, he ignored me too. My mother, Lucille, used to be in magazine ads for luxury skincare. Porcelain skin, designer coats. The kind of woman who never leaves the house without lipstick and approval. In every photo, she looked like elegance, personified. But living with her was like standing next to a department store mannequin. Beautiful, immaculate, emotionless. She never raised her voice. That would crack the image. Instead, she whispered critiques like compliments. Your posture makes you look tired. That dress is brave. I remember once. I showed her my college poetry journal. She flipped through a few pages, smiled politely, and said, "It's cute that you write, but don't let it get in the way of real things." To her, being presentable was survival. Life was a stage, and she was always camera ready. I was not. I wore hoodies. I stopped wearing makeup in my 20s. I chose comfort over control. She couldn't understand that. To her, I wasn't just a disappointment. I was an eyesore. Someone who kept breaking the frame. And when I started shrinking in every family photo, first pushed to the end, then cropped out entirely, I stopped showing up. It wasn't a dramatic exit, just a quiet retreat. I learned that silence was safer than trying to compete with perfection I was never meant to match. Madison was always the golden one. Even her name sounded like it belonged on a trophy. She was born with the same icy beauty as our mother, but with the polished confidence of our father. From the start, she knew how to smile at the right people, say the right things, wear the right shoes. At 12, she had a social calendar. At 29, she had her name engraved on invitations. She went to Yale, graduated with honors, and was hired before her diploma dried. Now, she's the head of communications at Taylor Estates. She's marrying Carter Langford, the only son of a hotel family so rich, they named their brunch menus after ancestors. Their engagement photo was taken on a rooftop in Rome. Mine was in the kitchen of a third-floor walk-up next to an open bag of groceries. Our parents love to say she brings pride to the family. They don't say what I bring. But I remember exactly what Madison once said to me at a family dinner. She was pouring white wine into a crystal glass. Her nails perfectly painted. Her tone light like we were just talking weather. She said, "Some of us are meant to lead. Others, like you, Emma, are just the background." I didn't say anything. I just smiled and let the words settle. Because I had learned something they hadn't. Being in the background gives you the best view of the whole stage. You see who's acting. You see what's rehearsed. And sometimes, you see exactly where the cracks begin to show. It came in a thick white envelope with gold embossing and a custom wax seal. The kind of invitation that smells faintly of expensive paper and unspoken judgment. Inside was a folded card with calligraphy, so formal it looked like a museum exhibit. And at the bottom, a handwritten note in familiar cursive. Please don't wear dark colors. Don't mention the divorce. Don't be late. This day is about joy. Not your past. I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand, but because I needed to let it sink in fully. The whole thing wasn't an invitation. It was a warning, dressed as formality. A carefully wrapped attempt to keep me invisible yet again. I set the card on my kitchen table. The sunlight caught the edge of the gold trim, like it wanted to burn right through. I picked up my phone and opened the secure messaging app. One message. Sent to my attorney. Activate Project H. Confirm all legal rights. Streaming servers. And backup platforms. Less than a minute later, the reply came. Fully compliant. Redundant systems in place. Footage archived. Contracts secured. I locked my phone. Stood still for a moment. Then walked to my closet. Between plain office skirts and sweaters I hadn't worn in months, I found a pale blue-gray linen dress. Simple. Modest. The kind of dress no one would remember after 5 minutes. But I chose it for that very reason. Because sometimes, the loudest thing you can wear is the truth. No one saw coming. Project H wasn't born out of anger. It came from the quiet realization that some truths would never be heard unless you forced the room to listen. I had been building it piece by piece, encrypted storage, secure platforms, legal permissions, technical redundancies. Not because I wanted revenge, because I needed protection. Not just for me, but for every person who ever sat in the dark wondering if their story mattered. The key to everything was Noah, my ex-husband, CEO of Halcyon Systems, a cybersecurity firm that protects everything from medical databases to whistleblower networks. After we divorced, we barely spoke for over a year. Then one night, he sent me a message. "I've been watching what you've built. I'd like to help quietly." He helped design the Safe Haven platform's private stream feature. No ads, no algorithms, no corporate tease. Just clean, protected broadcasting. 3 redundant servers across different states. 2 emergency overrides. I told him about the wedding date, and he nodded, like he already knew what it meant. The night before the wedding, I called him, just to be sure. He picked up after 2 rings. I said, "Are we set?" he said. "Every frame is time-stamped. No cuts. No edits. Only you can press the final trigger." I paused. Then I said, "Thank you. Not just for this. For believing in me." There was a breath on the line. Then he said, "I couldn't protect you back then. Let me get it right this time." The ceremony looked like it belonged on a luxury travel ad. White roses everywhere. Live strings echoing across manicured lawns. Guests dressed like they had stylists. Waiters in black vests offering champagne I couldn't pronounce. I walked in, unnoticed, wearing the linen dress and a small smile. Table 17. Tucked near the back. Between a distant cousin and someone who thought I worked in finance. No one asked about my life. They never did. They just assumed I stayed quiet because I had nothing to say. Then the lights dimmed, and the MC cleared his throat. A special surprise from the bride. He said, "A video montage. Madison's childhood. Her graduation. Her engagement. All perfect. All golden." Then a slide with text. Sometimes silence is the only choice left for failure. Laughter spread like spilled wine. Then came my name. Emma Taylor. Divorced. Childless. College dropout. A blurry photo of me from years ago flashed across the screen. I didn't flinch. I stood. Walked slowly toward the stage. Madison's eyes narrowed. "Not now." "Emma," she said. Lips still curled. I raised my phone. Opened the control app. Tapped once. The screen glitched. Then changed. A new logo appeared. Safe Haven Live. Under it, a title in clean font, "The Truth About Emotional Abuse in American Families." The viewer count ticked up fast, tens of thousands. Then over 100,000. I took a breath and spoke into the mic. "Good evening. My name is Emma Taylor. And today, I'm done being silent." The first audio clip played, and my mother's voice filled the hall. Cold. Sharp. She's a drain on this family. Women like her don't belong in public. Then came my father's voice. Flat. Calculated. She should have been born a son. At least that would have been useful. Chair shifted. Wine glasses froze in midair. Guests turned their heads, not knowing where to look. The screen continued. More recordings. More receipts. Conversations they never expected anyone would hear outside our walls. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stood still and let their words carry the weight. When Madison tried to cut the mic, Noah stepped into the hall. He walked calmly, took the podium beside me, and said, "I helped build this system, and I stand by every second of it." Then he turned to the guests and said, "Our divorce wasn't because Emma failed. It was because her family made it impossible to thrive." The room dropped into silence. He took a breath. "And one more thing. According to the medical records I once had access to, Emma isn't infertile. The person with the hereditary risk of infertility is Madison." The sound that followed wasn't shock. It was recognition. The realization that the narrative had cracked. Carter Langford, the groom, looked stunned. His parents whispered. Someone near the front actually dropped their fork. The Langfords left the next morning without a word. Within 72 hours, the engagement was publicly canceled. 3 real estate partners suspended contracts with my father's company, citing a review of values. A fashion brand removed my mother from a campaign. A family friend posted, "We must stop excusing cruelty in couture." And Madison, she disappeared from public life, deleted her Instagram, resigned from her role, moved to a cabin somewhere in Vermont. No one in my family called me, not even once, not to apologize, not to blame me. Nothing. And that silence told me everything. They didn't lose their reputation because of what I did. They lost it because of who they always were. I just stopped covering for them. 6 months later, I published a book. It was called The Last to Speak, a collection of true stories from the safe haven community, stories of women who left marriages, parents, churches, jobs, all to find peace they were told they didn't deserve. I didn't edit their voices to sound pretty. I kept them honest, rough, real. I added my story too. Not as the headline, as a thread, a quiet thread that ran between theirs. I wrote how silence is learned, not natural, how we shrink to survive, and how survival, while sacred, is not the same as living. I told the publisher I'd only sign the deal if every dollar went to the legal aid fund we built for emotional abuse victims. They hesitated, then agreed. The book came out in late spring. I didn't do a tour, just one bookstore signing in Philadelphia. But the book hit the New York Times bestseller list within 3 weeks. Readers posted their stories online. Teachers shared chapters in classrooms. A woman from Chicago emailed me, "I gave your book to my sister. It helped her leave. I didn't write it to be famous. I wrote it because I remember what it felt like to hear nothing but my own doubt for years. I wanted someone like me. Years ago. To walk into a store and feel seen. Not dramatic. Not broken. Just seen. Like they had permission to take up space. Even in silence." The cover of The Last to Speak was simple white background, plain font, and one line printed across the center. "Your voice has power. Don't be silent anymore." That phrase wasn't just a slogan. It was a promise I made to every person who ever felt invisible. Every morning, I still check my email. Messages come from all over the country. From women who thought about giving up, but didn't, because they heard a voice that sounded like theirs. I keep living quietly. I still eat dinner alone most nights. The Safe Haven office is just a small space in Minneapolis. But every day, hundreds of people connect through it. Connect to counselors, to legal advice, to hope. I don't need spotlight or applause. I need to keep showing up. For them, for the silent ones. The phrase became my own kind of armor and my daily reminder. To speak is to heal. To heal is to survive. And survival is more than just existing. It is reclaiming your story on your own terms. That's what I want everyone to remember when they hear my name or see the book. That's what I want you to feel when you watch this video. Nearly a year and a half after the wedding, Madison came back. Not with apologies or explanations. She showed up at the Safe Haven office wearing faded jeans, no makeup, and a sweater that looked like it had been through 100 winters. No glamour, no performance, just a woman who had finally run out of places to hide. She sat quietly across from me, said she wasn't asking for forgiveness, said she didn't expect it either. She just wanted a chance, not as sisters, not as family, but as two women who both carried wounds, who both needed a fresh start. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with exhaustion. She admitted she had been a victim too, trapped by the same silence she helped enforce. I poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to her. We didn't rush to fix anything. There were no grand declarations. Just a quiet understanding that healing isn't a sprint. It's a slow walk. Maybe this was the first step. Maybe this was the moment we both stopped running. For the first time in a long time, it felt possible to begin again. The bookstore was busier than usual that afternoon. Lines stretched from the checkout counters to the reading tables. People held copies of The Last to Speak with dog-eared pages and coffee stains. A little girl, no more than 11, shyly approached my table. Her mother followed, eyes red but steady. The girl whispered that she had cried during chapter 6. She wanted my signature. Her mother said she'd never seen her daughter so brave. I told her to remind her mom that strength isn't always loud. And sometimes it starts with a single word. The girl smiled, a small, hopeful light in her eyes. As they walked away, I looked out the large glass window. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the city square. Street performers played a soft melody on a saxophone. An elderly couple walked hand in hand nearby. I took a slow breath and smiled quietly. I was no longer shrinking, no longer invisible. I was standing in my own light,